Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our Wellness Talk at Home today. This week, we will be discussing alcohol and quarantine. My name is Amanda, and I am a third-year psychology student and a peer supporter, and my pronouns are she and her. I will be the host for today. If the presenters would like to go ahead and introduce themselves, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph. I'm with Party in the Right Spirit.
Hi guys, my name is Francesca. I'm also with Party in the Right Spirit.
Hi everyone, my name is Adnan and I'm also a member of the Party in the Right Spirit team.
So thank you everyone for introducing themselves. And today we have a guest speaker from Drink Smart, Laura, if she'd like to say hi quickly.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited.
Amazing. So if we just wanted to go on to the next slide. So before we begin, we will go over a comfort agreement. Adhering to these guidelines will allow for a safe and open space to talk and share opinions. Firstly, this is a judgment-free zone. We acknowledge that everyone has their own opinions. We would also like to practice active listening. Please be mindful of inclusive language such as pronouns. And lastly, we ask that mics are turned off and Zoom functions can be used, as this will help reduce background noise. Does this sound all right to everyone? And is there anything else someone would like to add? I think we're okay for now. So if we wanted to go on to the next slide. So we're just going to do the statement of acknowledgement of traditional land. I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Next slide.
All right, everyone. So this is just an overview of what we'll talk about for this wellness talk. So we'll start off by talking about some alcohol basics, and then some information about withdrawal symptoms, followed by alcohol poisoning. Then we'll go on and talk about quarantine and alcohol consumption, followed by alcohol and media influences. Finally, we have our guest speaker from Drink Smart today, Laura, who will talk about ways to minimize your risk when drinking. And I'll hand it over to Francesca to discuss some alcohol basics.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm going to start our conversation today with a little bit of alcohol basics. So first of all, what exactly is alcohol? Well, alcohol is a depressant drug. This doesn't really mean that it makes you sad. I'm not saying it's going to make you depressed, but basically this just means that it's going to slow down your brain. So I don't know if you guys have ever, if anyone's ever like walked through water, like in like a pool or like a lake or whatever, some other sort of water. It's a lot harder to move your body, move your limbs. So you can kind of think of alcohol as like the water that's going to make your brain a little bit harder to think and to process. And that's kind of alcohol's effect on your brain. So you're just going to be a little bit slower at things like thinking, reacting, moving. It's going to slow down our breathing, our heart rate, and also our cognitive functions. So anything like our memory, attention, decision-making, speech and language, anything like that. So this isn't me saying that alcohol is bad. I'm not saying it's bad to consume alcohol. It is a widely accepted drug. You can get it at your local liquor store or grocery store as long as you're over the age of 19. But it's really important to be mindful and be aware of what you're consuming, and then also of the effects that that's going to have on your mind and your body, which we will touch on later on. We'll touch on that later on. So I included the legal drinking age here. Hopefully we all know it, but in case you don't, the legal drinking age in Ontario is 19. And if you're wondering what exactly alcohol is, it's basically fermented or distilled fruits, vegetables, or grains. So when you think of beer and wine, these are fermented beverages, and these usually go up to about a 15% alcohol content. And then when you get into the harder liquors or spirits, these are distilled, and these are things like tequila and vodka, and these usually go up to about a 40% alcohol content. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next slide. And then here, I'll talk very briefly just on how alcohol kind of moves throughout your body. It will be super general, just so you get a little bit of an understanding. So when you drink alcohol, it's going to enter your stomach, and this is where it's going to get carried throughout your entire bloodstream. Most of it is going to get absorbed through your small intestines, but a little bit of that will also get absorbed through your stomach. And then alcohol is going to move through your blood. It's going to get into your brain. It's going to produce that slowing down effect that we mentioned previously. And then when it's done that, it's going to get metabolized by your liver. And this is really important because this happens at a rate of 1 standard drink per hour. This is a set rate. It's not going to go up. It's not going to go down typically. So that's important because if you're consuming more than 1 drink per hour, this is where intoxication is going to come in, because the alcohol is just going to be sitting in your body. It's going to be sitting in your blood until our liver is able to metabolize it. So you can think of it kind of like the alcohol is waiting in line for its turn to get metabolized by the liver. And this is something that's also going to raise your BAC, your blood alcohol concentration, which can also last for several hours. And then when alcohol is finally done, all of it's metabolized, it's going to leave your body mostly as urine, but a little bit is also going to be exhaled on our breath via carbon dioxide. Okay, and then next, Joseph is going to do a quick little poll just about a question.
All right, everyone. So we actually have a poll question, and Angelica will put up the question for all of us to see. And I'll read out the question, and it is, which alcoholic beverage do you think has the most alcohol content? So is it A, a 12-ounce glass of 5% beer, B, a 5-ounce glass of 12% wine, C, a 1.5-ounce glass of 40% whiskey, also a spirit, or D, they all have the same alcohol content? Yeah, so just take a few seconds and pick what you think is the correct answer. Okay, so let me take a look at the results. All right, seems like everyone has answered. And most of you have picked D as the answer. So they all have the same alcohol content. Now, it's okay if you don't know why D is the correct answer, because Francesca will actually explain it on the next slide. I'll hand it back over to you, Francesca.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph, for that question. So for those of you who got it right, congratulations. For those of you who didn't, I will explain it a little more in this slide. So these 3 images that you see on the screen, these are all standard drink sizes. And what a standard drink is it's kind of like a benchmark that's going to help you estimate the amount of alcohol that you're going to be consuming. So all of these 3 drinks here, these all contain the exact same amount of pure alcohol. These all contain 17 milliliters of pure alcohol, which means that they're all going to be having the exact same effect on our body. Basically, the only difference between them is that the volume of the actual serving size. So obviously a 12-ounce glass of beer is a much larger beverage than maybe a 1.5 glass of a spirit such as vodka. But that being said, they all still contain the exact same amount of alcohol. So that's just a really great way to understand the amount of alcohol that you could be potentially consuming. And then on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about blood alcohol concentration, or your BAC for short. So this is a measurement typically given in the amount of alcohol, usually in milligrams per 100 milliliters of blood. And this is something that's used to measure your level of intoxication. So we mentioned on one of the previous slides that the liver metabolizes alcohol at a rate of 1 standard drink per hour. So knowing this information, it's also possible to control your BAC or control your level of intoxication by being mindful of the number of drinks that you are consuming in a given amount of time. So I'm also going to touch a little bit just on the rules and regulations about driving and your BAC. So in Canada, novice drivers or even fully licensed drivers under the age of 21 must always have a BAC of 0 while driving. This is a 0 tolerance rule. You absolutely must have a BAC of 0 while driving. But for fully licensed drivers, it's a criminal offense to drive with a BAC of over 0.08. That being said, you can still face punitive action if your BAC is anywhere above 0.05. So punitive action is I think something like maybe your vehicle could get impounded, or I think your license could also get suspended. And if you did have any more questions regarding or concerns regarding driving and your BAC, you could definitely check out on the Ministry of Transportation's website for some more information about that. And then the link here just at the bottom, this is just, if you were interested, it's an interactive BAC chart that's going to let you play with the number of drinks and the amount of time just to see how that's going to affect your BAC and like the changes that will be happening there. There's a couple other factors that come into play with your BAC that I'll touch on a little bit later, but this is just a really great tool to kind of get a little bit of a general understanding. Okay, and then on the next slide, I added this table that I pulled from MAD. I think it has a lot of really useful information about the typical effects of alcohol and then their impact on your driving. And the reason I included it is because when you think of BAC, it pretty much just sounds like a bunch of numbers, 0.5, 0.05, 0.08. It's pretty arbitrary. It doesn't really hold a lot of meaning. Like you could obviously know, like, okay, it's not really good to drive with this amount of alcohol in my system, but in terms of what you're going to be feeling and maybe what your actions are going to look like at this level of intoxication, there's a little bit of ambiguity there. So that's why I included this. So you can kind of skim through this while I'm talking, but I just wanted to point out something really quickly in the BAC 0.05 section, that entire row. So under typical effects, it lists all these impairments. It says, a decrease in alertness, loss of small motor control, exaggerated behavior. But lumped in with these, it also says that you're going to be feeling good and that you're going to have a release of your inhibitions. So you're going to be letting your guard down. And the reason that I'm pointing this out is because that good feeling and that loss of inhibitions are going to potentially hide all those other impairments that you're going to be experiencing. You're going to be feeling happy, so you're not really going to care when your eyes can't focus anymore, or maybe you're becoming a little bit unstable or your coordination's a little bit off. But when you look at the predictable effects on driving, it says things and you can really read them and you can really feel the magnitude of their consequences. I have pretty bad vision. I'm really nearsighted. I can't see long distances. So if I'm not wearing my contacts, there's no way that I'd be able to drive down my street or even like pull out of my driveway without my glasses on. And the reason I'm saying this is because these may seem like really minuscule changes. Maybe your eyes aren't focusing, you're not, you're losing your coordination. But these are really important things because they're gonna be the difference between having the coordination and the reflexes to avoid a potentially life-threatening situation or unfortunately not having that ability. And I think it's just so important to be able to be mindful of yourself and of others when you're in a situation where alcohol is being consumed. In most cases, I would refrain from telling you what to do. That's not why we're here. We're not here to instruct you on how to live your life. But in the case of drinking and driving, I am telling you that it's bad. I'm telling you it's dangerous, and it will definitely have the most devastating consequences. So this was my little PSA on drinking and driving. And on the next slide, I'll talk a bit more about the effects of alcohol. So as I mentioned in the BAC section, the effects of alcohol are going to depend on so many other factors, such as age, sex, body weight, previous experience with alcohol, any food in your stomach, your genetics, the environment that you're drinking in, and also if you've consumed any other substances, whether they are any medications that you're on or anything illicit. So these are the typical effects that you could be experiencing. Obviously, it's not a conclusive list. There are other ones as well, but these are just some typical ones that you might experience. So you can read through the early and continued drinking effects while I'm talking, but I just wanted to point out something that I felt was a really impactful explanation for the effects of alcohol, and in particular for the extreme intoxication effects. So any of the dangers that are associated with excessive alcohol use, and I'll get into them a little bit more on the next slide, but these are due to alcohol's effects on your brain. In your brain, there's a region called the medulla, which handles all of your vital functions. So this includes breathing, telling your heart to beat, your swallowing reflexes, regulation of your blood pressure. And if too much alcohol is consumed and your brain function slows down too much, the depression of medullary function can be really fatal and it's extremely dangerous. So we just wanted to include that there just so that you understand the potential side effects and the potential risks associated with excessive alcohol consumption. And then that's a really great transition into the next slide that I'll talk about, which is going to be about alcohol poisoning. So you may have heard of alcohol poisoning before, but if you haven't, this is essentially what happens when you consume more alcohol than your body is able to handle. Any instance when alcohol isn't able to leave your body at that constant rate of 1 standard drink per hour is considered alcohol poisoning. And this can usually start off with some symptoms involving the slowing down of your brain functions and losing control of functions like your balance and your coordination. But when alcohol poisoning becomes even more extreme, it can lead to the effects that you see up on the screen. So these are things like confusion, disorientation, pale skin, slowed heart rate, unconsciousness, and even vomiting while unconscious. And when our brain function slows to this extent, we're going to lose control of our muscles, which means that our heart muscles are going to lose the ability to contract, our lungs are going to lose the ability to pull in the air that it needs. And the reason I'm saying this is because alcohol poisoning is so dangerous, and I really can't express just how serious this can be. So please, I urge all of us to be mindful and be aware of the signs and symptoms of alcohol poisoning. If there ever comes a time, hopefully this never happens, but if there ever comes a time when you are in a situation where someone is experiencing alcohol poisoning, something you can do is guide them into what is called the recovery position. And this is pretty much exactly what the name suggests. It's a position in which you can guide someone into in order to reduce their risk of aspirating or choking on their vomit while they are recovering from alcohol poisoning. And to do this, what you're going to do is you're going to gently roll the person onto their side. You're going to slightly tilt their head back, and you're going to tuck their top hand under their chin. What this is going to do is it's going to open up their airways, and it's also going to make sure that their mouth stays open. If possible, it would also be best not to leave this person alone. And no matter what the situation is, if the person isn't responsive, if they maybe don't seem to be waking up, please call 911 as soon as possible. Alcohol poisoning can be fatal. It is so dangerous, and I strongly urge all of us to be aware of the dangers associated with it. And then on my last slide here, what I'm going to just discuss briefly is the withdrawal symptoms. So after prolonged drinking, there's the possibility of developing a dependency. But once you stop drinking, you could potentially start to experience some withdrawal symptoms that can start as soon as a couple hours after your last drink and last for several days to weeks after you stop drinking. So these are some common symptoms that people experience. You could experience some nausea, tremors, trouble sleeping, seizures, irritability, upset stomach, agitation, and anxiety. So while these are not exact symptoms that are going to be experienced by absolutely everyone, since we are all unique, we all have our own unique experiences and our own unique bodies, but it is still really helpful to get a general understanding, just to have that insight and that awareness. Okay, so that's everything from me. Thank you guys so much for listening, and Joseph is going to take over next with alcohol and quarantine.
All right, everybody. So I'll be talking about alcohol and quarantine. So we can just go to the next slide. Okay, so as we've all seen by now, alcohol sales have gone up ever since the start of this pandemic, when governments have decided to announce lockdowns and various other restrictions. So news agencies have made headlines such as these, announcing the increase in sales of alcohol. So you can see here, alcohol sales on the rise during COVID-19 pandemic. BC alcohol sales up during pandemic, prompting concerns. So we can just go to the next slide. All right, so here is a picture showing some alcohol sales percentages of a few Canadian provinces. And these numbers were gathered by CBC from each province's provincial liquor agency during the month of March. So some provinces have released alcohol sales figures, though many provinces gave rather vague statements about their alcohol sales. For example, if you look at the top of the image for Quebec, all they said was their sales were comparable to the Christmas season. For Saskatchewan, they reported a 22% increase in their alcohol sales. The Newfoundland and Labrador Liquor Commission, they saw a 36% increase in their sales of alcohol and a 70% increase in alcohol from express stores. And for BC, they saw a huge increase in sales for bulk sizes of liquor, which is also known as spirits. And they also saw a huge increase in sales for beer and wine as well. We can go to the next slide. All right, and similar trends were also reported in the US. Nielsen, they reported that alcohol sales in stores went up 54% in late March of 2020 compared to the same time in 2019. And online sales went up almost 500% in late April. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then it wouldn't be surprising to hear that with an increase in alcohol sales, there's also been an increase in alcohol consumption. In a survey poll conducted by Nanos, they found that 1 in 5 Canadians, or 20% of Canadians, staying at home more due to COVID-19 have reported an increase in alcohol consumption. So 47% reported that their consumption has stayed the same. 10% say they have actually drank less alcohol, and 23% have reported that they don't drink at all. And the researchers found that a lack of a regular schedule, boredom, and stress were the most common reasons for consuming more alcohol. And interestingly, a lack of social gathering and trying to stay healthy were the most common reasons for consuming less. So people that have reported that, they said that they're trying to stay healthy just in case they catch the virus, so their bodies can fight it off, and they just want to just maintain their health. And if we can just go to the next slide. The next slide, yep, so here it shows like a pie graph, which shows how people's consumption of alcohol have changed ever since they started staying at home more due to COVID-19. So this was measured in May of 2020. And the researchers, they asked the question, since you've been at home more, has your alcohol consumption increased, decreased, or stayed the same? So you can see here that about 20% of the respondents said their consumption has increased, which corresponds to that 1 in 5 Canadians that was mentioned on the previous slide. 10% said they saw a decrease in their alcohol consumption, and 47% said it has remained the same, and 23% say they don't drink at all. And the next slide actually has an interesting graph. It shows the change in the frequency of the consumption of alcohol compared to pre-COVID-19 times as measured in May of 2020. So here you can see 21% of Canadians are saying that they are drinking more often. 65% are saying they are drinking around the same, and 15% are saying they are drinking less frequently. So what this goes to show is that for many Canadians, not only are they consuming more alcohol, but they're also consuming it more frequently. And if we can just go to the next slide. So with that being said, with an increase in alcohol consumption and an increase in consumption frequency, it's also not surprising to know that binge drinking has also gone up as well. So what exactly is binge drinking? Well, according to CAMH, they define binge drinking as having 5 or more drinks on one occasion for a male and 4 or more drinks on one occasion for a female. And a study conducted in the US, they found that 34% of people have reported binge drinking during the pandemic, with more binge drinkers increasing their alcohol consumption compared to non-binge drinkers. Interestingly, one thing they found was for every 1 week increase in time spent at home, the odds of binge drinking actually goes up. So this is a major concern because as lockdowns and various other stay-at-home restrictions continue, so will binge drinking. And we can just go to the next slide. All right, so we know that with binge drinking, there are many risks associated with it, both in the short term and in the long term. So some of the more short-term immediate risks to binge drinking include misjudging a situation or what's being said, having blackout. So that was mentioned on an earlier slide, so that's like having no memory of what happened. It can worsen depression, anxiety, and other mental health problems. It increases the risk for violence, such as getting into fights with others or being assaulted. You can get injured or killed from operating a motor vehicle or being a passenger in one. And you can also get alcohol poisoning, which, as we know, can be fatal. And some of the more long-term risks to binge drinking include damage to your stomach, pancreas, liver, and brain, developing various kinds of cancer. You can get cardiovascular problems like high blood pressure and heart disease, and you can also develop an addiction to alcohol. So if we can just turn over to the next slide. So there are other reasons that people have reported for consuming more alcohol during this pandemic and being in lockdown. One of them is anxiety. For sure, the levels of anxiety that many people experience have gone up. People are anxious because they can be worried about their jobs, such as whether or not they'll get laid off, or if they have gotten laid off, the stress of looking for another job is very high. Students can also experience more anxiety as students have to adapt to a new online learning environment, not being able to see your classmates or your professors. That can cause a lot of anxiety for people. So that can cause people to consume more alcohol. The increased feelings of loneliness. Many people are separated from their friends and family. So that can cause more people to drink alcohol. And finally, financial difficulties. We know that COVID-19 has really taken a hit on the economy and the job market. So many people are having difficulty looking for jobs and being financially secured. So that stress can cause people to consume more alcohol at this time. But there are alcohol-free ways to help manage that stress and anxiety. One good way is physical exercise. If you can go aside for a walk or a run every so often, that can really help in lowering that stress and anxiety. Getting lots of rest really helps. Eating healthy, doing things like yoga and meditation, and also talking with friends and family over the phone or video. All these things can really help in lowering that stress and anxiety that many of us are feeling at this time. Okay, and the next slide, we actually have two reflection questions will be presented by Amanda.
Thank you, Joseph. So after all that material that we have gone through, we just wanted to insert a prompt that allowed some reflection. Feel free to open your mic to speak, or you can answer in the chat. The first question is, do you think the quarantine has influenced drinking habits with post-secondary students? If so, how? And secondly, what factors do you think influence alcohol consumption during quarantine? So just as the other points mentioned, again, boredom really does play a factor into it, having no sense of routine as well. Does anyone else have any other reasons that they think maybe drinking has gone up? So someone said in the chat, definitely not just drinking, but also other drugs such as marijuana, which is very true. All right, if no one else wanted to share, I think we can continue on to the next slide. Okay, someone else also said, I think other factors are just loneliness. Thank you for that.
All right, so thank you for that, Amanda. So now let's talk about the influence that media has on alcohol use. Next slide, please. So let's start off with alcohol in the media. Alcohol is glamorized in most media, if not all, and people are exposed to it daily. Whether that is your favorite actor or actress drinking alcohol in a movie, different sports being sponsored by popular alcohol brands, or your favorite TV channel showing alcohol commercials during intermission. Media is simply just so vast that the alcohol industry can develop numerous advertising strategies to target different populations. So next, on the next slide, we'll talk about the technological revolution. So as we enter new decades, technology continues to advance, and the current generation of youth is at the forefront of that peak accessibility. Just to put it into perspective, back when I was in middle school, which was about from 2013 to 2015, I'd say about 10 people in my entire grade had a personal smartphone. It was very rare overall to see students have their own personal smartphones. Nowadays, it's typical for even elementary school students to have their personal cell phones. The youth of the current generation get exposed to technology at very young ages. For example, in 2019, Common Sense Media conducted a large scale survey in which they found that 69% of children in the US own a smartphone by the age of 12. Next slide, please. This brings to light the mere exposure effect or the familiarity principle, which is a very common psychological phenomenon that refers to when individuals develop a preference or liking for something due to repeated exposure to it. This is very relevant to how alcohol industries function and thrive in the media. So on the next slide, we'll be looking at a research study that involves this. So Salim Al-Habash and some other researchers at Michigan State University conducted a research study that investigated this mere exposure effect with respect to the portrayal of alcohol in social media. Participants were split into two groups. One group was exposed to advertisements for different brands of beer on Facebook, and the other was shown an ad for a brand of bottled water. After being shown this, they were offered an incentive for participating and got to choose from a gift card for a bar or a gift card for a coffee shop. The results were very interesting. Out of all the participants in the beer ad group, 73% of them chose the bar gift card, while 55% of the participants in the water ad group chose that card. This disparity, 73% versus 55%, goes to show that just viewing alcohol advertisement have an influence on an individual's attitudes towards consuming alcohol. Social media's ability to influence people with respect to alcohol use is extremely alarming, especially concerning youth. Nowadays, nearly all of youth use social media, and age restriction policies aren't that effective simply because they could fabricate their age. This raises questions about what could really be done about minimizing alcohol industry's ability to influence youth through social media. So on the next slide, we'll be talking about other relevant research studies. So research team at Dartmouth Medical School followed more than 5,000 late elementary and middle school students for about 1 to 2 years and discovered that those who seen more movies that had alcohol use in it were more likely to have tried drinking by the time of the follow-up. Furthermore, 92% of 601 contemporary movies glamorized alcohol use, and 52% of those movies were for the general audience, so even children could watch it. In a study that followed 2,250 middle school students in Los Angeles, it was found that those who were exposed to more alcohol ads on TV during the 7th grade were more likely to drink some form of alcohol beverage in the 8th grade, such as beer, wine, liquor. Also, they were more likely to have 3 or more alcoholic beverages at once, at least one time during the month before the follow-up survey. So on the next slide, we'll be talking about why is media influence so profound. So, a review of neuroscience, psychology, and marketing studies revealed that the development of the human brain causes adolescents to be more attracted to branded alcohol beverages that portray risky behavior because it gives them immediate satisfaction and they associate it with a higher social status. In 2005, for example, a whopping $2 billion was spent on alcohol advertising by alcohol industries. Just try and imagine that. This was even before social media started booming, like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So imagine how much money is spent now, considering that social media is exponentially more popular. That's very fascinating. So on the next slide, I'll pass it over to Amanda, who will be sharing a reflection question.
So now let's take some time to reflect. Do you think media has a large impact on alcohol consumption in youth? And what are other factors do you think influence youth to drink? Again, feel free to use the microphone or the chat for your inputs.
Yeah, I definitely think that media has a large impact on alcohol consumption in youth, especially with the ease of access to technology. So as mentioned before, like a lot of young people have access to phones and laptops, and with that comes a risk of seeing other people drinking and risky behavior associated with alcohol consumption. And that can really influence people to drink more. Some other factors that I think influence youth to drink is also trying to fit in and maybe societal pressures or peer pressures as well.
Yes, those were all really good points. And also just to mention on your last one, Joseph also added in the chat that social standings or trying to be cool definitely impact that as well. So thank you everyone for the input. If we wanted to move on to the next slide. So Drink Smart is an alcohol awareness and education program created for students by students, and Laura has been involved with drinksmart.ca for 3 years and is a graduate from Centennial College. She has been actively working with students in campus groups since graduating and remains active in the hospitality, food, and beverage industry. Through her work and volunteer positions, both on and off campus, today, Laura will be sharing some smart drink tips, and this will help minimize the risk and to help make responsible choices for yourself.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. Not used to all of that. I just want to make sure everything's sharing for you guys okay. You can see my screen. Perfect. So before we start, I just really want to be transparent with everybody today. And that's that I'm not a public speaker, nor am I a wellness coach or nurse, but honestly, I am a friend. And so the conversation that your peer leaders have been sharing with you so far, it's been amazing. There's so much information in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to focus a little bit more on what are some small choices that you guys can make that can really have a big impact and ultimately really help you minimize your risk and the risk of hurting yourself or even those around you. So if you choose to drink alcohol or not to drink, it's totally okay. It doesn't really matter. And if you choose not to drink and you're like, why do I need all this information? Why do I need to understand all this? honestly, you might find yourself in a difficult situation where there is alcohol being consumed around you. And it's so important for you guys to be able to understand what to look for and really how to help somebody. So now that we've before we kind of get things started, I really also want to make sure that there's no notion. It's not right or wrong to choose to consume. It's really your choice, and having the right tools and facts and information so you can make the right choice for yourself. So just like you, I really believe that an informed decision is the best decision. So if you have any questions, pop them into the chat and we'll make sure that we answer them as we go. So who and what is Drink Smart and Drink Smart Tips? What's it all about? So a group of students, much like yourselves, were from the Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario area, and they're sitting around and they're wondering, why are all my friends getting drunk after having 1 or 2 drinks? They really didn't understand what was happening. So they started to set out and learn and do research to really find out more about the effects of alcohol and what binge drinking really was. And in the end, what they wanted to do is they wanted to put together what they've learned and find a fun way to kind of share that with their friends. So they started to stand up in front of classes. They played trivia games, they hosted events, and everything that they're doing was really just in the hopes that it would help one person, even if they weren't drinking. So you guys have already learned a lot about standard drinks and BACs and stuff like that. So the myth that a drink is a drink is not true. We've learned that. Every cup is different and every type of alcohol is different. How much you're consuming, what's your body mass, what are your genetics, everything makes a difference, and everyone drinks at a different pace as well. So once you're really aware of what a standard drink is, and I can show you an example, this 1 ounce shot glass is different than this 2 ounce shot glass, but it's a shot glass. So you really need to take the time to understand what that standard drink is. And that really is going to be the biggest risk reduction tip that I can give you today. So it doesn't matter that you're drinking liquor like it's beer, and it doesn't matter that you've ordered a 9 ounce wine glass instead of a 5 ounce wine glass. What matters is that you understand that your body needs time to process that alcohol before you consume your next drink. So this is really why we like to share in our tips is that give yourself 60 to 90 minutes in between each drink. And I know that can be really hard. So I'm going to share with you guys some tips to help kind of pace yourselves and slow you down and make that a little bit easier. And one of those tips I can give you right now is have a glass of water. So alternate an alcoholic drink with a non-alcoholic drink, and that'll really kind of help you naturally slow down. So planning is so important. We plan everything, don't we? Well, I don't, I forget sometimes, but it's so important. And eating is one of the most important things that you can do. Foods that are high in fat and protein will actually mix so well in your stomach that's going to help slow down that alcohol absorption process into your bloodstream. So my tip for you is that you have to continue to eat if you are continuing to drink alcohol. You can't drink all night and then go home and sculpt down a pizza or McDonald's or something like that and think it's going to work. That's not the point here. The point is you need the food in your system to help slow down how fast that alcohol is going to enter your bloodstream. Another tip is those salty snacks and peanuts and chips that we all crave maybe. Try to really avoid those. That salt in the food is actually just going to make you more thirsty. And if all you're doing is to choose to drink alcoholic beverages, you're just going to end up drinking more. Another tip really is to stay home. And what I mean by this is if you do need to go out and you have been drinking, even if it's one drink, plan a safe way to get there. It's more important now than any, because we kind of forget. We could be studying all day or in a class and then we have a drink or two and then we're like, oh, I'm going to go pick up my supper that I ordered for takeout. But you can't drive. Once you've had that first drink, you actually are starting to impair your judgment and you could be over that legal limit. And as you've just learned in Ontario, if you're under 21 or you're a novice driver, there's a 0 tolerance rule when it comes to having alcohol in your system and being behind the wheel. So really plan ahead and plan what your night is going to look like before you have your first drink. Money can be actually a helpful trigger. So this can work in a few ways. Let's say you've set yourself a monthly budget to how much that you want to spend on alcohol. And what if you've spent that money in your first week? That might be a trigger that you need to check up on yourself or your friend. Maybe you've heard your friend bragging about how much money they're spending or complaining that they're out of money all the time. It might be a good question to ask them how they're doing and ask them a little bit about their drinking habits. Backup plans. This can be for an emergency phone number. This can be you need help, who can you call, whether it's your parents or a friend, how to avoid peer pressure, or even carrying a condom. It's just really good to always have a backup plan and to remember it's more important to exchange a number and hook up later if you have been consuming alcohol. Pour it yourself, guys. It really just kind of makes sense. And this even goes if you're sitting at a dining room table with your parents and your parents want to pour you a glass of wine with dinner. Pour it yourself. Avoiding top-ups is really kind of key because you can easily lose track to how much you've already planned that you want to drink, or you can easily start to consume more than that standard drink within the time frame that you've set. Another tip really is to kind of bring your own drinks. And this could be bringing your drinks to the computer before you jump on a Zoom call. You're really planning that you want to consume one and you're going to bring your own, things like that. You want to plan things out as much as possible. There's also some really good non-alcoholic drinks on the market, and there's nothing wrong with choosing those. I choose them all the time. Sparkling waters, 0% beers, things like that. At the end of the day, no one really cares what you are drinking. And sometimes in a social environment or even an online Zoom party, you might feel the pressure, but you have to remember, it's about the company. It's about the conversations with our friends and really engaging with others. That's the important part, not what's in your cup. So if you are feeling that pressure, put chocolate milk in a coffee cup, put a lid on it, have it in a traveler's mug. No one's going to know, but you're still going to feel involved and maybe you won't feel the pressure. Back to this, put the lid on it. This is a really good tip when it is safe for us to be together and go out. If you are in a situation, having a lid or covering your drink is a great form of drink protection because sometimes things can get slipped into your drink and you won't even notice it. So always having a lid can be helpful as well. Counting. Okay. I'm not telling you to stack your drink cups. I'm not telling you to take out a scoreboard. But what I'm suggesting is that this really goes back to planning your night and really understanding what that standard drink is. Drinking games, even online, okay, they might sound fun, but it's not the game that's the risky part. What is risky is that you could easily drink too much and easily drink too fast, which really means that you're hitting that wall. So if we go back to what was already shared earlier about BAC levels and the standard drink. So what's happening is each standard drink that you're consuming will stack up in your body until that 60 minutes passes for it to be processed out of your body. And there's so many factors that can affect how fast that is actually processing. So as you've also learned, if you're consuming 4 to 5 standard drinks in less than 2 hours, you're technically binge drinking. And this is where the risk is that you're consuming too much alcohol. You risk overdosing and really running into that alcohol poisoning range of blood alcohol in the BAC level in your body. And this can be really, really serious, especially if you're alone. Time. This is the most important thing as well. I keep saying everything's the most important. So as you've already seen, it's really, really easy to overpour a standard drink. And it's not illegal to have a bartender even pour you more than a standard drink. So what you need to remember is that your body needs time. It needs time to process the alcohol out of your system. This is why eating the foods, alternating with water, they can really help pace you out and really slow down how much you're consuming. So another tip is after your first drink, when you are becoming impaired, And it's, as you've already learned, your reaction time slows down and your judgment is blurred. This is what alcohol is doing to you. So it's super easy for you to forget. So practice some of these tips as we go, and then they will help you in the long run. So safe consumption of cannabis or alcohol, no matter what it is, whatever substance you choose, it's important. Sometimes you're even doubling and tripling your risks. So if you can pick one, that is always the best choice. If you're mixing alcohol with anything, it really kind of causes this chemical imbalance in your body. So if, for an example for you, if you inhale the cannabis, you're going to feel the effects right away, and they can actually last up in your system for about 6 hours. Let's say you're ingesting the THC. It can take up to 2 hours before you feel any effect, and that is going to actually last in your system for up to 12 hours. So what, Laura? Who cares? Like, I don't understand any of this. So the part that I want you to pay attention to is, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're having a THC infused gummy for your very first time, and you're sitting there and you're like, I don't feel anything. So you drink a beer while you're waiting. Well, all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you have the dizzies and you're sick and you're in trouble. So what really happened there is when you mix these two substances, the intoxication is intensified, and it actually comes on much, much faster. Alcohol, it's actually opening your blood vessels, and then you start to let your guard down. So now you're inhaling much deeper and you're breathing longer, the drag, stuff like that. So you've got more THC entering your system and a lot faster. And it's all because of the alcohol. So pick one. So another key thing to remember is that alcohol will affect you differently than your friend, and everything about you matters. Did you sleep for 6 hours last night, or did you sleep for 9 hours? Have you been up studying all night and drinking coffee? Or have you been taking mindful breaks and eating well and drinking water throughout the day? Even your body type, your genetics, did your parents drink? How much you drink? Do you have muscle mass? What is your weight? Did you exercise? Did you not exercise? All those different things, especially your mood, is going to change how alcohol will affect you at that day and that time that you're consuming it. So it's super, super important that you're not always going to have the same experience. So before I kind of start to wrap up, I think one of the big elephants right now in the room, and that I've been noticing, is the stuff that you're seeing online. And we've touched upon this just briefly, was it 1-2 presentations ago? So those images and the social media videos that we're seeing, or our friends, when we scroll through their feed, all those things, invites to happy hours and social parties, liquor advertisers, they're showing more images. The point is, all these images seem to be always happy people, and they seem to only be happy when they're cheersing and drinking online. So what we did actually is we reached out to one of our friends at Safe Social, great resource, and we wanted to get some tips that we could share with you guys today. And it's really, really important to remember to take a step back and a break, not only from our social media, but maybe even a break from alcohol. And this is what they shared with us. The degree to which you feel the need to check fear of missing out, the more likely you are to become addicted. So I kind of just want to leave you guys with that and just kind of do a quick little finish up. If you're at home, in residence, with a friend, with your parents, with a roommate, always make sure that you understand what the laws and the policies are. Make sure you kind of have a roommate or a house rules. And this could be, mom, dad, we're not drinking till, Friday. Whatever it is that you guys need. Know how to help somebody. So your peer leaders shared some of that information with you today, and I encourage you to seek out more. Knowing the signs and the symptoms of alcohol poisoning and how to help is super, super important. And obviously know where to get help or even to talk to somebody. And there's a ton of resources at the school, as well as Good to Talk, as well as a great resource. So that's pretty much it for me. I am sharing my personal information with you guys. If there's ever any questions or information, you obviously can head over to the website or you can pop us an email. We're here for you guys whenever you need us. And I'm going to stop sharing.
So thank you so much, Laura, for that part. You did an amazing job and it was very informative. As this discussion did touch on a lot of potential situations students could find themselves in, I did want to mention resources accessible to everyone. Through the Health and Wellness Center, counseling and health services are available. If you are seeking to talk to someone regarding any aspect of your health and well-being, please call the number that I'm going to be inputting in the chat right now, or you could also email. Additionally, another service is you could download the My SSP app. This allows that students have counseling services accessible to them for 24/7 at 24/7. And lastly, there is Connects Ontario, which is a free and confidential services for people experiencing issues with addictions and mental health. And again, this is all listed in the chat. And then along with the counseling services, Health and Wellness has peer-to-peer drop-in sessions. These are held every Tuesday and Friday from 1 to 2:30 p.m. We are trained student peers who can provide coping skills, strategies for managing mental health, and resources that may be beneficial. And we would love to see you drop by. So a big thank you to all the presenters, and thank you to Laura, and thank you for everyone attending today's Wellness Talk at Home.